Hello, everyone. Joshua Gilliland here, one of the founding attorneys of the Legal Geeks. With me tonight is Gabby Martin and Thomas Harper, and we will talk about the 5th episode of The Mandalorian, The Gunslinger, The Return to Tatooine, the Fun in the Sand adventure, the Sand People adventure. There is so much there, and I gotta say, we liberated that bar. It now serves droids, and I'd like to take credit for that, but that's not important right now. Gabby, Thomas, how are you both doing tonight?
I'm doing well. I can't get the idea that a lot of people on the internet think that Amy Sedaris and Baby Yoda is like this Virgin Mary child energy, chaotic energy that they need in 2019. So that's where my brain is at right now.
And speaking of Baby Yoda, I'm a little hurt right now. I not because of anything anybody specific did, but I finally got a Baby Yoda shirt, and I didn't even wash it. I took it right out of the package, put it on, and had to go to Target, as you do. And instead of keeping my jacket on for the short duration, I immediately took it off, and I said, somebody's going to say something about my Baby Yoda shirt, and I'm going to get a new best friend from this Target run. And not a single person said something. I got a couple confused looks as folks kind of cocked their heads at a grown man wearing a small Yoda shirt, but no new friends. So I'm going to have to try again.
You know, I support your life choices, and you did nothing wrong. So there's it's what you went to
I would
Atlanta
find a different Target. Find a different Target.
That's where I'm at in 2019. That's how I'm closing out this year, is trying to make new friends with a t-shirt at Target.
Well, let's get into the Gunslinger, which I saw one of the folks from Lucasfilm refer to this episode as the chef's kiss episode, and I was like, what's he mean by that? It's like, oh, that's what he means. And I again, just making sweet love to all the nerds, writing I love you and lipstick on the mirror, and I'm fine with it. I'm absolutely fine with that. So, well, let's talk about this episode, and it begins with a space battle. It's a very quick space battle, and it does look like one of the vintage ships from the prequels that makes an appearance with this gunfight. And we have the Mandalorian, say like, hey, that's my line, when, about, you can come in warm or you can come in cold. And we get an instant issue of trademark infringement between bounty hunters. And Gabby, could you share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I thought that was really interesting, and I was glad that, the Mandalorian called him out on it. Obviously, the Mandalorian is not going to pursue any kind of trademark infringement recourse against our now deceased other bounty hunter friend. But yeah, he clearly took this line, and a slogan as defined by courts is a brief attention-getting phrase used in advertising or promotion, or a phrase used repeatedly as in promotion. So, we only know that Mando used it once, but I tend to think that he used it for every bounty he went after that didn't come willingly, that was kind of his opening line. So if it was his opening line, and obviously it had to make the rounds to get to this other bounty hunter to become known as his line. But yeah, he definitely slogans can be protected under trademark. They have to be inherently distinctive or creative, which I think this one is, because it kind of differs from your traditional, bring you in hot or bring you in cold type of, phrasing. And it could develop a secondary meaning, which obviously to bring you in warm is to bring you in, willingly, and to bring you in cold is you put up a fight, and I'm going to have to bring you in dead, possibly for a lower price. So it could meet either of those standards. And we know that trademarking slogans is nothing new, and trademarking phrases is nothing new. Not only do businesses do this, but artists do this a lot. Specifically, Taylor Swift is famous for doing this. When her 1989 album came out, she trademarked several lyrics from her songs, including This Sick Beat and several other ones that I can't name off the top of my head. But you know, celebrities also trademark their baby names, and so it's a way of protecting your identity and protecting something that is a part of your brand, a part of your business, but specifically part of your brand. So this phrase is clearly part of Mando's brand. This other bounty hunter is kind of rubbing it in and sticking to him with using it against him. And I definitely think he has would, if our bounty hunter had survived, he would have an argument for trademark infringement.
So you're telling me that every time the Cantina song plays in A New Hope and I yell out spontaneously, "This sick beat, I love it," I'm infringing on Taylor Swift's copyright in my own home. You've introduced a lot of legal liability to my daily life. And I will say, that phrase, "bring you in cold or bring you in hot," I've started using it with my own toddler daughter when she fights me trying to put her jacket on as we're taking her in to daycare each morning. But I will say, you make a good point. He is the type of person, I don't know that he's gone out and done any official paperwork to trademark this thing, but a guy like him in a very competitive market, as bounty hunting clearly is, would need a signature, right? That phrase means something to him. It's catchy. Clearly somebody else thought a lot of it to start using it. So it makes sense that he would defend it. He just chooses to defend it with deadly force. And that may be another legal issue. Can you defend your trademark with deadly force? I don't know.
Yeah. The answer is no. No, you cannot. Please, Taylor Swift, do not go out and show up at Thomas's house
with a flamethrower.
Take action against him.
Yeah, the extrajudicial remedy was a bit much for shooting down what could have been a Z95, but that does raise good self-defense issues because he was being shot at by said Z95. So when you look at the totality of the circumstances, defending oneself with lethal force from lethal force versus bringing a copyright suit, I'm going to go with the lethal force situation because you need to be alive in order to bring said infringement action.
Yes. Which
then brings us to where we land. There's we go back to Tatooine, back to where it all began, at least in the release of the movies. And it's fun to see what 7 years of reforms have brought after the death of the Hutts and the fall of the Empire, with landing in the this with this hive of scum and villainy. And we touch down. There's a mechanic, and Mando leaves Baby Yoda asleep on a bunk on the ship. So he is in a bunk. So it's not like the kid's put in a closet. It's
kind of looks like a closet, though. Kind of looks like it has a door.
It's a bunk. And he's on a ship. Ships aren't exactly known for their creature comforts. That's a bunk. It's a very, very tight little bunk. And Mando goes out to find work, and the kid's sound asleep. Now, the last time the kid fell asleep after the Rhino Beast, the Mudhorn, he was out for a long time. Now, granted, weeks on, the prior planet, with all the krill farmers, he probably was sleeping normal hours. But again, he's put down to bed, and Mando's going to go find work. Let's talk about some of the child endangerment issues that could come up with that. Gabby, how about your take?
Yeah, poor Mando. Well, he has so many issues leaving this kid. This whole series can just be about him abandoning this kid over and over and over again. And this is specifically a unique situation because in the last episode, he tried to leave Baby Yoda with a server, and then he tried to leave Baby Yoda with Omera on the Krill farm. So he was leaving the baby in somebody's custody, right? He was leaving him in somebody who would watch him and supervise him and what have you. Here he's leaving him like just theoretically in a hot car because they're on Tatooine, they're on a desert planet. He's leaving him in a hot space vehicle. And we know that 20 states have laws that make it illegal to leave a child unattended in a vehicle, regardless of the temperature outside. So you could leave a kid in a car when it's 60 degrees outside, 100 degrees, below zero. It's illegal regardless of when you leave them there. Here where I am in Connecticut, it's actually a felony for any parent or guardian to leave a child under the age of 12 unsupervised in a place of a public accommodation, which we can reflect on how that would work in the cantina scene in the previous episode, but also to leave them unattended in a motor vehicle for a period of time that presents a substantial risk to the health or safety of the child. And so in Florida, there's also a law against it. It would be considered a misdemeanor, and the period there is excess of 15 minutes. So presumably Mando has left the ship for longer than 15 minutes when Peli Motto goes on the ship. So he's violated Florida law, he's violated Connecticut law by abandoning his kid on a hot spaceship. He has violated several laws in at least 20 states.
So
Tatooine does seem like the Florida of the galaxy.
It does.
A Tatooine man. Yeah, I think it's a little different, and it'd be interesting to get into case law to see if they recognize any differences. No, he's not left in a backseat of a Camaro. He's left in something that could be more like a motorhome, that has a bed in it that's bigger than just, a car. Mm-hmm. It'd be interesting to see if there's any case law that differentiates that, or if they just take a very, strict view of a motor vehicle is a motor vehicle.
Well, I think the key thing, and especially with Connecticut law, you see this, is the key aspect, because the Connecticut statute applies to both places of public accommodation and motor vehicles. And the key in that statute, and also the Florida statute, is that leaving the child unattended or unsupervised. So I think he had a better opportunity. He had, a better defense in the case of leaving the kid in the cantina with the server, quote unquote, watching him, as opposed to just kind of leaving him in the car and, taking off with nobody to monitor the child, because what if the child has an illness or has any sort of issues and nobody's there to attend to the child. So,
and certainly I think you're right on. And if the law we're talking about has substantial risk is sort of the key hinge factor there, the risk to the child while under the care of a random bartender is a lot different than the risk to the child on blazing Tatooine in the back of a non-running spaceship, even one that's fairly sizable. That thing is going to get hot pretty quickly, even in the slight shade of the docking bay there. And Josh, I almost wonder if the space can almost work to the Mandalorian's disadvantage. In other words, there's a lot more stuff for the Baby Yoda to get into, wandering, or blasters, that whole cabinet of blasters. He's got a carbonite freezing chamber in there, and there's a lot of attractive nuisances, if you will, all over that ship that maybe there aren't in the back of, like, if he was driving like a space Camry or something like that.
And we know Baby Yoda is interested in all the little doohickeys on the ship, as evidenced by the past 2 episodes. He's clearly touching everything and playing with everything. So he's not trustworthy.
Yeah, yeah, I would think a babysitting droid would be helpful at this point in time if you need to go undertake a job and not have the child blow anything up. I would think that would be a much, much smarter plan. So that way the child is safe. So let's go to the immediate contract negotiations that happened after disembarking the Razor Crest and chatting with Peli. He has 500 Imperial credits, so even he had some of the funny money left over, and asked like, what can this get me, at least for now? And he was going to go take on more work. What are your thoughts on the contract issues with this? And Thomas, why don't you take the first swing at this?
It's not really a well-defined contract, and from both sides, Mando doesn't seem to have a full idea of what he's asking for. Like obviously he needs berthing for the ship, but they don't really get into the extent of the repairs that are done. He doesn't ask for an estimate to be done. He has no idea what the scope of work is. I don't think Peli Motto knows the scope of work that needs to be done, other than that this ship is all banged up and needs a lot of work. I think the other issue here is, what's the labor rate, right? He doesn't want droids to do the work. Presumably that's a lower rate of labor than it is for a human like her to have to do it. So he's gotten himself into a very ill-defined contract here. Peli Motto has no idea. I mean, she's taking an awful risk that she's just not only going to have this giant hunk of junk sitting in her hangar needing repairs with no guarantee that he's going to come back, but shortly after he leaves, she's now in charge of this baby as well that she doesn't know about. And it's funny, she sort of modifies the contract on the fly and takes this baby under her wing and just says, we're going to charge more for the babysitting services. But I wonder whether Mandalorian would have necessarily agreed to that contract modification.
Gabby, your thoughts?
Yeah, it does seem that it's a very terribly negotiated contract. I mean, while they were negotiating or quasi-negotiating, I was just thinking, my God, if you went to go do that with a mechanic, you would just be in so much, oh my God, the disaster you would be in if you tried to do something similar at a mechanic. But yeah, I think also all contract and ideas of getting paid kind of fall to the wayside when she looks into Baby Yoda's eyes and she's just like, I'm going to do it. Like, I don't care. Like, I love this child. I'm taken,
This is
whatever.
my consideration.
This is my exactly.
Yeah, I got that sense too, because as soon as she looks into those big eyes, it's like, okay, I'm good.
Yeah.
I understand this man. He needs work to take care of this child. I'm in. And again, that's also part of the magic of Star Wars, of people who might look gruff, all of a sudden it's like, nah, let's go save these people.
Yeah.
And that's Star Wars. So but yeah, there's some seriously undefined terms and a brand new babysitting gig that comes out of this, and trying to figure out food with something with bones. Like, really? I'm gonna go with something soft now.
Clearly nobody around this child, except for maybe the krill farmers, has any idea what to do with the child. Like, they're like, it looks cute.
Yeah, the number of folks in the galaxy that we've seen so far with any meaningful experience with kids is like preciously small. I do like that she does not question that a guy like Mando has a little baby with him, and not a baby that looks anything like him, probably.
And it's also funny that she never assumes that he's like, the baby is being held against its like
Right.
If there's anything nefarious there, she's just like, yep, father, son, like, I got it. I know what's happening here.
Your dad's working hard to protect you and raise you.
Again, that's the magic of Star Wars. I'm totally down with it. Best of Human Nature. Now, is it me or is the puppet emoting more? That we're starting to see more expressions from the puppet.
I think we're getting like drawn into the puppet. I think we are becoming like Werner Herzog, who just wants to protect this puppet at all costs.
We're collectively melting like sticks of butter in the microwave.
Yeah, it looked like the mouth was moving more and there was just a little more emoting, and maybe it's been there the entire time and I just didn't pick up on it.
You haven't been under the spell. You haven't been under the spell.
I'm just a cold person. Well, let's go back. We go back to the cantina, which is, maybe Wur still owns it, or actually he didn't own it. A Wookiee owned it. Mm-hmm. Maybe Wur's retired. Maybe he's dead. Maybe the Wookiee no longer owns it, and I'm blanking on the Wookiee's name.
Chalman.
Sorry,
it's a disease that I have.
And yet you married and had a child. That's impressive.
This is true.
Normally that's a vow of celibacy. So good for you. But
I didn't disclose a material fact of my own.
But we go to the cantina and there's no droid detector. There are droid bartenders. There's R5 rolling around, and it's not super busy. But then again, it's probably a weekday or early in the morning, so it would be weird if it was. So, but we do see, another bounty hunter who's, I think, in the same booth that Han was, in the same seat that Han was. Mm-hmm. So yes. I find that, again, just pure nerd love. But if we, I don't, maybe our fictional lawsuit that we did with the mock trial, did bring civil rights to Tatooine for the droids.
Having defended the cantina, I reject that notion entirely. This was clearly a voluntary change in business practices that had nothing to do with said suit. There's no admission of liability.
Yeah.
One thought that popped into my mind as he's meeting Toro Calican is that when he speaks to the droid bartender, he's asking for a non-guild job. Clearly that has some significance. It's off the books. I mean, we don't know a lot about the Bounty Hunting Guild, but it seems like there's a line in the sand between guild jobs being maybe more official jobs and whatever he's seeking out being under the table, black market type deals. And I was sort of wondering out loud as I was watching this, whether this is some sort of like significant legal risk for him now, because he shot his way directly out of the Bounty Hunting Guild. And does the guild itself offer you legal protections when you take these jobs? In other words, similar to our discussion of real world bounty hunting, has he suddenly lost his badge, his certification to go out and do these things under an official banner?
If the guild allows murder for hire, I don't know how legitimate it is, because you shouldn't be able to contract for murder. That contracts against public policy, and bail bondsmen are not henchmen for murder. So there's some serious issues with that right out of the gate. But God knows what kind of non-guild work he was looking for. I mean, that is a tough one. It's
but
weird.
I think even removing the murder for hire element of it, he's definitely, I mean, think about it as, somebody working in any sort of job with any sort of protections. I mean, you have the kind of standard of the employers paying taxes. The employee has taxes removed from their wages, and it's a very kind of government regulated system. And we don't know how much, the guild was actually regulated. Although there is the bounty hunter proclamation code that IG-11 recites, so maybe there is some regulation. but now he's without that. So he's working under the table. The guild may have had some sort of insurance to protect him against any sort of claims if things go wrong. They may have had medical insurance, any number of things that you get with a traditional job. And now he's lost that because he did shoot his way out, and now he's working under the table. So he's working on unreported wages, untaxed wages, no sort of union, no sort of protection, no sort of regulation. And it's a very shadowy business that he's now getting himself into, which may open himself to more issues with the child, as far as things going wrong down the line.
Yeah, so many things to unpack there. Well, let's get into, once again, another partnership that's formed, this time with Toro Calican. And we talked about this last week, but just for the highlights, that a partnership is two or more persons to carry on as co-owners of a business for profit form of partnership, whether or not the persons intend to form said partnership. In this, the partnership was we're going to go out and we're going to go catch a deadly assassin who used to murder people for the Huts. I think they absolutely had a partnership, and even Toro refers to the Mandalorian as partner, which, acknowledges, said formation of the partnership. But that raises the interesting issue of the duty of loyalty, because you're supposed to be loyal to your partners and not do anything to breach the duty of loyalty. And what code sections, this is from Connecticut, state that partnership is to hold as a trustee for any property or profit or benefit derived from the partnership in the conduct can't do anything adverse to said partnership. Like you're in this together. You're supposed to advance the partnership together. It's not supposed to be for personal gain. And that gets severely compromised when Toro has his little heart-to-heart with Fennec. And Thomas, could we get your take on that first, with her saying you could be a legend?
She makes him the offer he can't refuse. It's curious here. So I think he, in going after or killing her and sort of attempting to betray and ultimately betraying the Mandalorian, I think it's a clear breach of his duty of loyalty here, almost about as black and white as you can get. This would be the perfect example to just illustrate this principle for law students who are learning this, because a lot of times you see this in a business relationship, and it's maybe arguable whether what they're doing is actually a breach. But here he literally ends the episode attempting to take this child and basically upturn everything that the Mandalorian has worked for. And when your core duty involves placing the success and interests of the partnership above their own personal interests, that's exactly what he's flipped on its head here, with a blaster, no less. So it's another nice example in Star Wars of a nice black and white, clear-cut issue.
Yeah, and the other, it smacks you right in the head. The comment of "she's no good to us dead." I'm like, shooting Fennec destroyed the purpose of the partnership, which was a breach of Toro's fiduciary duty, in addition to raising serious issues of murder that we can get into in just a moment. But the entire purpose of the partnership was to bring her in so they could get paid, and Toro shot her on purpose to benefit himself. So all kinds of fun issues to unpack there. Which then brings us to the issue of, murder. Gabby, could you take this one?
Again, with the first year law school flashbacks under the very great Martin Margulies at Quinnipiac, and his many lessons on murder, and also a deep dive into Wikipedia and the various degrees of murder. But so I think what we have here when he shoots Fennec, we're definitely in murder territory as opposed to manslaughter. So manslaughter is, kind of involuntary accidental death. The person accused of manslaughter doesn't intend or plan for the victim to die. There's no malice aforethought. There's no intent. So here we definitely have intent to kill. So the question then becomes whether it's first degree or second degree murder. First degree murder would require malice aforethought. So that's the planning element of first degree murder. Now, as the great Martin Margulies taught us, planning doesn't have to be as, we tend to think, oh, somebody sat there for weeks and months and, planned the murder. But it can be a relatively short period. It's a period of considering, what this killing this person would mean, and a short amount can count as malice aforethought. And I think here you could argue that he did have malice aforethought, because as Fennec's talking, you can kind of see the wheels in his head turning of, what can I do to kind of become a legend? And obviously he's not, we don't think he's a great guy to begin with. And, he kind of is weighing his options. So I think you could make an argument for first degree murder, but definitely you have second degree murder here, which is intent to kill without malice aforethought. This is your crimes of passion, your depraved heart murder, where an individual under circumstances has a depraved indifference to human life, and causes grave risk or death to another person. So you're definitely in intent to kill territory. Second degree murder. First degree would be a different argument.
I think you touch on a really good point there with the short amount of time that's necessary for malice aforethought. I think this would be first degree murder. The challenge would be proving what was going on in his head, because you don't have any witnesses there, unless Fennec survived that shot to the gut and she's there to testify, and we're talking about attempted first degree murder, because she says this line to Calican: if you want to be a bounty hunter, you've got to make the best deal for yourself and survive. And he sort of looks away, and he's weighing this option. He may not be smart, but this is a young guy that's been sort of planning things out and trying to scheme and get ahead from the moment we see him at the beginning of this episode. And so I think this is sort of a microcosm of Calico, just a rash decision, but not one that was made in the heat of passion. I think he listened to her words, he heeded her words, and he pulled the trigger based on her words, and thought that he was going to come out ahead in all of this as a result of that. So I think he did commit first degree murder.
Definitely. And he didn't take the cuffs off her. So it was more an execution after she convinced him, hey, you need to bring in the Mandalorian. So he shoots her. There's no good way out of this. I think it's murder one, and definitely not heat of passion. He decides to offer. Now, if she survived, because it's a waste of a perfectly good actress to have her in it just that briefly. Sure, we still haven't seen the final season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but come on, Ming deserves better. But she just got to the Star Wars franchise. Come on, throw her a bone.
But I think she is going to survive. I mean, at the end of the episode, obviously we're getting a little ahead, but at the end of the episode, we do see a cloaked figure stand over her. presumably my thought was that's Giancarlo Esposito's character, maybe, you know, reviving her somehow. But if she ultimately does die from that gunshot wound, I mean, say she's, you know, maybe not dead, maybe almost dead, as there's clearly a difference between dead and almost dead. She, you know, if she ends up dying later from that gunshot wound, he would still be guilty of murder under the delayed death exception. You know, as long as you can trace an eventual death to an injury, a person could be charged with both attempted murder and then murder down the line.
Yeah, there's, we'll find out who that is. It's obviously another bounty hunter, but yeah, but you would think Mando would have checked to make sure if she's dead or just bleeding out. Because I don't think he would leave someone bleeding out who's still a target that he could at least cash in on somehow. So that just seemed weird. But we do get a do-back. Now let's talk about kidnapping, because people might go like, how's there kidnapping? Pelio and Baby Yoda didn't leave the hangar. They just got forced into the Razor Crest. How is that kidnapping? And I would say, like, look at the conviction of O.J. Simpson in Las Vegas, which was push a guy into a hotel room that the guy was staying in. That falls into the kidnapping realm. And Gabby, could you help us understand why that is?
Yeah, and so kidnapping is usually the unlawful taking or concealment of an individual, or has also been defined as anyone who, without lawful authority, forcibly seizes and confines another with intent to cause such other person to be confined or imprisoned. So even though this is temporary, there's neither in the Model Penal Code nor any sort of definitions you'll find out there. There's really no time element to kidnapping, the element of taking somebody. So he clearly has a gun to the head of Peli and Baby Yoda. He's forcing them from the ship, and he's kidnapping them. He presumably tends to either injure them. He's using them as a shield and a hostage, when he confronts Mando. So he there's no necessary time element to the unlawful taking or detention of somebody.
Yeah, it's also just bad form. So, but I'm old-fashioned that way. But it does bring up the true Western type shootout scenario for defense of others. Mm-hmm. And that does get into the right to protect third parties. We've talked about this before, but Thomas, can you help with the dad defense of saving said child?
Look, the Mandalorian would have been well within his rights to kill everybody on the planet of Tatooine in defense of Baby Yoda. We can all agree on that. But this is one of the cleanest examples in the series so far of defense of others. He's got a blaster trained on him. He's got an individual that has made it very clear that his intent is to either kill or injure the Mandalorian, or as an awful alternative, kill Baby Yoda or Peli. And those aren't really, great options. And I think when the Mandalorian steps into the shoes, so to speak, legally speaking, of either Peli or Baby Yoda, either of them are facing the same threat. Clearly they're being held at blaster point and facing certain death if Mando doesn't comply. So he's well within his rights to defend them. And in doing that, this is sort of the unique feature of defense of others. You step into that person's shoes and have whatever legal ability they have to defend themselves. So clean kill. I love that he uses the same sort of flare gun that they used to advance on Fennec earlier in the episode to turn it right back on him. and get him. While I think Fennec probably survived that gut shot, I do not think we're going to see Calican again, which I'm fine with.
Yeah. Especially with what happens to his corpse, which we need to talk about. I don't know, just drag it out past the Dune Sea. So it was a few years ago. There was a lot of TV shows that had issues with dead bodies, moving them, defacing them. So I did a lot of research into legal issues of dead bodies, which apparently is an actual area of the law. I did not think I would go to law school for that one. And
I will say this episode needs to get published before local law enforcement or the FBI search certainly either of your search histories,
Yes,
because you're
please.
both going to be guilty as hell. And I'll sit here. I don't know, officers. They seem like upstanding folks to me, but that search history does sound pretty sketchy. No, I will not consent to you having a consent search of mine. So present the warrant, please.
Thanks.
Yeah. Love you too, big guy. So let's talk about not reporting a fatal shooting, and Gabby, we can alternate on these. So it's
So we'll take the non-creepy one first, because this does tend to happen more often than people weirdly, illegally dumping up a body. People do not report fatal shootings for a number of reasons, especially in high crime areas. They're afraid to report, because of gang activity and what have you. However, in Missouri in particular, it is a Class A misdemeanor for a person to either fire a weapon and that causes injury or death to another and not report it, or knowing that he or she has caused such injury, fails to report that to a law enforcement officer. So in Missouri, at least, and possibly some other states, it is a misdemeanor to report. So likely someone on tact, either Mando or Peli, not reporting the shooting of Toro Calican may be a misdemeanor, but it still seems like a very kind of lawless area. So I don't know how much trouble they would be in.
Yeah, I would point to the stormtrooper heads on pikes as an example of because I think those are more than just the helmets. I think there's a surprise in each one.
I think there are some entrails there.
It just is a message of, this is what we do to your kind. And even if the heads weren't inside, it still sends a strong message of, this is what we do to your kind. And even if it does look like a cleaner, more friendly Mos Eisley's, that's a one hell of a welcome wagon of like, oh look, heads on pikes.
We went from Star Wars to Game of Thrones real quick.
Yeah.
In that environment, I don't generally endorse unlawful conduct, but in that particular environment, I don't blame Peli one bit from quickly getting her pit droids in action and taking care of this body, because Tatooine is probably the last place that I would want to have to be answering questions about some dead bounty hunter in my docking bay.
Yeah, there's that. I mean, God knows what kind of law enforcement's actually there. It does raise issues of, we got another dead dude, how do we handle this? Maybe she didn't want to deal with the paperwork. There are so many weird wild cards with just get rid of the body.
She's got a lot. She's going to have to explain her unlicensed daycare that she's running there. I mean, there are all sorts of issues here.
I'm just taking care of my client's kid. It's just, it's fun. It's therapeutic.
She just wants to play her cards and live her life and just survive.
Be free of government regulation. Just
Exactly.
It's like those people who want to live in Montana and not have speed limits. Just a very, very extreme libertarian point of view of, I just fix things. It's who I am. plus childcare. Well, let's get into the illegal dumping of bodies, which, you know, is a crime. We have lots of rules with dead people. Breaking this down, the law of the dead is they're supposed to get buried fast. We don't want diseases coming about. We don't want rotting corpses. It's bad for morale. It's bad for public health. So we want to get rid of these things. Either they're buried or they're cremated very quickly after death. That's why we have cemeteries. We have rules for moving dead bodies between counties. And this was just drag the body out to the Dune Sea and leave it there. Theoretically, it get picked apart. I don't know if they plan to strip it. I mean, what, do you bury it? Just
we do know there are womp rats in Beggar's Canyon, so I can only assume that that's the real reason, other than the distance from Mos Eisley.
Yeah, would there be banthas that could feed? I mean, like, would they chew on it? I don't know. But some scavengers would probably pick the bones clean. Gabby, what did your unfortunate research?
Oh my gosh, it was terrible, and yeah, I may be deleting my browser history shortly after this because it is very creepy. And I stumbled. Apparently, there's a whole Wikipedia page about the dumping and destruction of a body. So thanks, Wikipedia. Thanks for everybody who put that together. Like, go get some help. But one thing I stumbled on, which I did not know this, apparently, again, there is a whole area of law of the dead. There are actually local zoning laws that regulate where bodies can and cannot be buried. So unfortunately for you, you cannot like go bury your loved one's body, I don't know, in Six Flags or Disney World or what have you. It has to be in an area that's specifically zoned for cemetery and internment. And the state license and permits where graves can be, where bodies can be buried, and you can be arrested for illegal disposal of a body, as a man in Roanoke, Virginia was. So please do not go illegally dumping bodies of your loved ones. There is a whole genre of literature that says why that's a really bad idea. So just don't do it. It's a crime.
When it seems like, especially with crimes like murders and whatnot, you can't go a day or two without reading a story, probably a lot out of Florida, of somebody that murders somebody, hides their body, tries to dispose of their body, and then in addition to the murder, they get charged with desecration of the corpse or mishandling of the corpse.
Mm-hmm.
You saw it recently. Oh, I'm trying to think of that case where that father killed his wife and two young kids, and then went to the oil derrick or the oil field where he worked and dumped their bodies there. But quite frequently, I mean, you're dealing with a situation where the person has not only mishandled the corpse, but they've removed the literal crime scene or the key element of the crime scene. And so there's a particular sort of law enforcement angle to that. And I think that would play here, because as big a jerk as Calican may have been, that dead body sitting there was a crime scene, regardless of what legal justification Mando had in killing him. Whatever Tatooine authorities exist would have an interest in investigating this, certainly sending him to an autopsy to determine cause of death and working all those things out. And it's just not kosher to take him and dump him in Beggar's Canyon, of all places.
There are many
If he had
issues.
said the Sarlacc, I would have been like exploded with pure Star Wars awesomeness, but I'll take Beggar's Canyon.
Beggar's Canyon's still a nice deep cut, so
Yes.
it works for me. Which you raise the issue of desecration of a corpse and dragging. If they literally just drug the body out, God knows how many miles, that would absolutely be desecration. So let's break down desecration. So many states recognize there's a tort for abusing or mishandling a body. And that's generally because you don't want to freak out family members with like, what did you do to my boy? Under common law, and it was Lord Coke who said this in the 17th century, that a corpse has no value. So it's like you don't go selling bodies, and that's an entire different issue with medical experimentation. But it's generally the ancestors or living heirs that can bring a claim because they don't want the remains of a family member disturbed. Now, New York has cases about the improper treatment of corpses, specifically that those who handle a corpse, such as a funeral home, have a higher duty of care, that they're not supposed to mess up said body for like presentation at a funeral or anything like that. Or there are other horrible cases with corpses being mishandled for funerals that we don't need to get into, other than we're supposed to bury dead bodies very quickly because it's an issue of public health, and dragging a body out miles to Baker's Canyon, if that's exactly what the droids did, raises all kinds of wild issues for desecration of a corpse. Like it could maim the body, so it would be bad.
I just picture like the residents of Mos Eisley like watching these pit droids kind of walk out dragging this dead young guy in there, just like, well, it's another day in Mos Eisley. Just shrug and go. Mess. Shrug and go back to your blue milk.
I mean, again, presumably they have body parts sitting in a public area on spikes, so I don't think they're that concerned with the laws of public health and desecration of bodies and all of that kind of stuff. If there is any authority, I would just like to see that one like overwhelmed town clerk of Mos Eisley just like, you can't do that. You can't do that in here.
The one person trying to enforce leash laws, and just at her wit's end of this is not okay. Now, things that just struck me, and we do need to kind of keep this brief, but this edition of Mos Eisley's looked more like the 1977 original cut of Star Wars. That it's a little more on the sleepy side. We don't have CGI creatures walking around. It's a little more on the sleepy side, and I thought that was interesting because what's happened post Return of the Jedi? Did killing, Leia killing Jabba the Hutt, did that create a giant power vacuum that actually allowed normal government functions to start working? Follow the Empire? What impact did that have?
Yeah, you kill the area's largest employer of scum and villainy, and it kind of becomes tough to make it work there. I was particularly struck that the cantina was relatively empty. You had two bartenders who had a lot of time on their hands. I did love that they were the same model EV droid as Jabba's torture droid EV-99 that you see in Return of the Jedi. They seemed a little kinder though.
Yeah, they again, for food service and prep, you would have to be. And R5, he didn't have a bad motivator, so he was out living his best life. He's doing his thing. So, well, yeah, again, maybe it was morning. Maybe they had just opened. So, but not seeing the droid detector on the wall, that was a nice improvement. And the speeders looked like the same type of speeder that Anakin had in Attack of the Clones.
Swoop bikes.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a nice touch.
Yeah, just making sweet love to the fans. So that's the way I think of this episode.
The only thing missing was a sand joke. Nobody made a sand joke. There should have been a sand joke. That would have capped it off. It would have been the cherry on top.
Just dunk on everybody.
No Jawas, but it was nice seeing sand people, and violence did not ensue with said sand people and the Banthas. So I thought that was kind of nice. Trade their way through to safety where no one needed to die.
I love that the Mando clearly has familiarity with Tatooine and with that species in particular, and that they're still represented as this sort of wild and dangerous threat that's out there that's not to be trifled with. For somebody like the Mando to want to go the negotiation route to get through cleanly, as opposed to saying, well, that they're nothing that we can't handle. It just reinforced that sort of same sense that Obi-Wan gave you during A New Hope.
Yeah, we don't have to kill everything.
I also like the unspoken kind of nod to the whole aggressive negotiations line that, Calican was clearly itching to just like blast those raiders like off the face of the planet. And, Amanda was like, no, like, let's actually do this diplomatically and let's negotiate with them. And, we'll give them your binoculars, your brand new binoculars.
Hey, those were new.
They are to them.
Yeah.
So from a certain point of view, they still are. So they're just not yours.
Yeah.
And we don't have to fight our way out. So everyone lives. Yay! So,
I also cannot wait now with this new perspective on the Tusken Raiders, dealing with diplomacy and how Mando interacts with them, as opposed to how Calican and obviously Anakin and everyone else seems to interact with the Raiders. I am now waiting for the analysis of the post-colonial subcolonialism of the Tusken Raiders in the Tatooine society, and how they've been mistreated and misrepresented. So if anybody finds that, please send it to me so I can read it.
it's a wonderful expose. Could be someone's doctorate paperwork right there.
Yes.
Here's my thesis.
Hey,
So,
if I could write a subcolonial analysis of Gollum in the Lord of the Rings, you can too. You can do it on the Tusken Raiders.
God bless you. That's exceptional. We should publish that. So, a couple things. If you enjoy us, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or wherever you listen to us. I just launched a Patreon page, so Patreon/The Legal Geeks. So that way to help cover costs for all of our adventures that we have. And I'll do some one-off audio commentary on things like Watchmen and some other shows that we might not blog about because there's just not enough time in the day, but have some audio commentary about the trial of Adrian Vatt and how the closing argument went in that. So check that out. So with that, we only have a couple episodes left. I don't know if we'll get that Ahsoka live action cameo. I'm going to hold out hope that that's their swing for the fences moment for how we saved as a kid. But until then, everyone.
If CW Elseworld and Crisis on Infinite Earth can pull a last minute crossover, I have hope for Star Wars and The Mandalorian. I do. I have hope.
Yeah, and they haven't announced all of the crossover and cameos. So there's apparently 6 that they haven't, disclosed. So
Yep.
Get ready. They talk about excellent fan service. Anywho, with that, everyone, thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in, and stay geeky, America.